Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avagnoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World. It's only been a week.
I know. I thought that last night.
And it's funny because of where did we even start with this topic? Because this is really it's just been snowballing, right? Since our weekend, our
Right.
deep dive
Well,
weekend.
and I had to look back at my notes. I will have to say, last night, and I think we started talking about um, first separation male and female and the difference in male and female, and then we started talking about how those roles have been defining behaviors and that behavior can be triggering, especially when it's something that you and I have not struggled but strived to overcome a certain behavior, like whether it's helplessness or victimhood or
Right. And because we've been looking at right. So we started with looking at the matrix, right? Looking at what we created and how we created it and how the whole thing, well, the matrix as we know it here, like these set of earth dimensions, because we have many of them out there that we've created,
right
but that we created imbalance. We created imbalance to propel ourselves to balance within this separation, like this level, especially this level of density, where it seems that lighter levels of separation attain balance a lot more easily, right? Where it's
well,
almost like,
it's more inherent, almost like
right,
it's just part of the state of being there.
right. And so we created this, and the idea of, and I think when I talked about that Atlantis thing on Thursday at my Living the Shift, right? Right. So if you haven't listened to that, go over to my Living the Shift page and listen to that, because that's also part of what we're talking about here. Because I don't think we need to go through that whole thing again, because this is like an important topic beyond that, right?
Right.
So, but the Atlantis Living the Shift from last Thursday actually gave a background of what we talked about and what we uncovered and really has been exploring since our deep dive weekend a couple weeks ago, right? God, I can't believe it was like,
I think it's actually 3.
no, it's not 3.
It'll
It's
be
2.
2.5. Okay.
2. So I know it's so weird. It feels like it was yesterday. It feels like it was a year ago at the same time. But
Right.
so the whole thing having to do with, we created a matrix, right? We created a collective ego from, like, this is a really top end, so go listen to the rest of the details of what I'm saying. But,
Right.
and within that is what we created, doubt, that what we experience here is doubt and shame and blame and anger and fear and pain. And we have, it's like, I've called it the earth experiment for years, right? Like
Right.
and so within that, as we've talked about so much, is this really deep sense of creation experiencing, well, first of all, creation experiencing creation, and within that, more creation. And it's like an org chart, right? From the top down, like we keep on splitting within this collective ego, which is what we all are, right? That's really,
Right.
and the concept that came to us is, well, the collective ego, as we created it, this set of density is like the God of what most belief systems believe it is, but it's really just the collective ego, aka the matrix. And
Right.
we are all of, like our identities come from that, right?
Right.
Here.
Right.
And so within that, we have created all these lessons on how to move around in it through propulsion. And the propulsions have to do with opposites, right? imbalances.
Right. Just like they do in nature,
Yes. Yes. And so,
because nature is just still part of it.
yes. Yep. Yep.
It's not separate. Not it's not different. It's not above or below. It's all
Right.
part of it.
Right. And so one of the things that hit us last week had to do with the imbalances and the propulsions and the oh, what term do I want to use? The shady, the things aren't what you think they are, right?
Exactly.
And especially when it comes to those gender roles that we've created, cultural gender norms. And it's the, like I started digging into, it's been heavy. I started digging into why I'm so triggered, why I have been so triggered, right? In my personal life. Now, the funny thing is, I've always been able to deal with it very objectively and easily when I'm working with a client or, a student or whatever without a problem, right? But when it's in my personal life, there's a big trigger with me about, say, like the helpless woman, the woman who pretends to be or presents herself as that, and then also, how men react to that. Oh, honey, let me help you.
Swoops in. Right.
Yes, right.
Yes.
And in looking at that, I was like, okay, so if it's not what we think it is, right? And that's where you and I got to that. It's actually the opposite of what we believe consciously. Like we believe culturally, and we impart culturally that the females are subordinate and that the men have all the power. But the reality is, with the perception of weakness and needing and being the damsel in distress and all that kind of stuff, it's the power. That's the power, because it manipulates men to do what you want them to do.
Exactly. It absolutely, because and the sign of that is, or the indicator of that is the power of creation. Yes, it's not just women alone. However, it's the majority of the woman's power to create life here in this density.
Which is pretty much the ultimate power here in this density, right?
Absolutely.
And so, and it's funny because so we had a small energy share Friday night, and we talked about this in great detail, and about how it is actually a manipulation that we are taught to use.
Absolutely. So it is not a sign of your weakness, it's a sign of your power.
Right. And yet it's disguised and it's called a weakness, right?
Right.
And so then on the other side, then I started looking at the other side, and that's what really has come up in such a huge volcanic way is I said, well, then if I judge women so much for using that, if I get so triggered, or I've had so much experience within my personal life where I have never been that way, I've always been taught to have that balance of power and feminine and masculine stuff together, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I look at others and I don't understand them not.
Right.
And yet then I've been at a disadvantage. I've been
allowed yourself to be at a disadvantage.
Right. I allow myself to be at a disadvantage because I don't do that.
Right.
Right. But then I was looking at that and I was like, so then, but what would trigger me more is the women versus the men, like that women. And I looked at it, and I was talking about this Friday night in shares, thinking back when I was younger, I mean, I much rather hung out with guys than girls, because I just didn't like the vibe.
I was exactly the same way. Exactly the same way.
And so, and it's interesting that, you look at so much here in the spiritual community, and there's so much led by women and all that kind of stuff. But what I realized is that men are really treated as the subordinates here. like we pretend they're not, and we pretend it's the opposite, because
Well, and we
men,
give them the earning ability with money to kind of make up for that.
right.
So then they in turn try to use that as their counterbalance to the power.
Yeah. And this is not just men, it's like, I'm talking men in general. It could be masculine energy or whatever. But the
Right.
thing is, we have punished the masculine energy, right? And gave them burdens
Right.
and kept the power where it was presented as weakness. And so I'm not saying this to promote separation or to encourage, but it was really, I was forced to take a really hard look at that this weekend.
Yeah.
And I realized that, they always talk about, oh, women are so emotional, women, da da da, da 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 da. We have no support system for men in society. We have none.
Right.
We have none. No emotional support except for women. And
Right.
women still treat them as something that they're not. And so when you look at it that way, it's like, and I was having this discussion this morning, as who does a grown man talk to
Openly,
about,
honestly,
openly,
freely.
honestly, and from the
Right.
heart? Who?
Well,
Very,
depends
very,
on his relationships, but very little are available.
because men don't talk to men about stuff,
No.
because culturally that's not cool, right?
Right. Right.
and and I look at, there's these expectations that we culturally put on them, right? We culturally put on them that they have to be strong and da 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 and all that kind of stuff. But I was just looking at, they don't talk to their friends
No.
about stuff that matters, like from the heart, right? So they sometimes talk to their spouse if they have one, right?
If they feel comfortable with that,
But
because it does change the dynamic.
but they will only share so much because of
Right.
the way, depending on the way they want their spouse to see them, then they believe that if they, go too far in, then it's going to change the way they're seen, right?
Right.
Because they're supposed to have a certain persona. What a weakness. So they are constantly hiding from themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
then we wonder where rape comes from, where, all this stuff that is perceived inequality of power, but it's
Right.
really because they feel powerless.
Right. Right. Yes, exactly. And the dogs are agreeing.
I hear that.
Yes.
So it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't, damned if you
Right.
don't, damned if you don't. And so it's funny that this all came up this weekend, like
Rosie.
after we started talking about this last week, because at one point I said to myself, if I judge women so much for having that persona of, oh, I have to be taken care of, or somebody has to do this for me, or I don't know how to do this, or, the man in my life does it better, or whatever, right? It has to be my knight in shining armor, or a guy
Right.
has to help me. And I hold such judgment personally. Like, and that's the funny part is, like I said, for some reason, I have no problems like seeing it objectively in session or in classes, but like personally,
Right.
and especially in my face because of all of what we've covered. What is it that remember I said, so then I started questioning myself. Do I then think men is as less than because I don't blame them at all? I don't keep them accountable because I'm like, oh, honey, you just fell for it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm there too. It's like, yes, you deserve that because you fell for that. Right.
And so then I'm like, wow, I realized there was a deeply embedded bias that I was holding. And then I started questioning, do we all hold that? And then I started just bam, bam, just seeing it everywhere. And I was like, wow, wow. And so we've created this whole reality around, propulsion and duality, like from, like usually being triggered from one thing to another, right? Away from something versus
Or toward,
being toward it, right?
right.
And it's all smoke and mirrors because it's the opposite of what you think it is. Like we've been doing in our Wonderland program. It's not what you think it is.
Right.
right? And I was like, this one is so core. Remember, we couldn't even, when we were talking, we couldn't even see the whole of it. And then, like I said, I just kept on getting hit with it in such core ways this weekend that are really raw. And it's like, well, like you can see, like, and I can suddenly see, like, wow, I can see where all of these power struggles come from,
Right.
perceived power struggles. And they're all created because we do treat men as if they're not as good.
Right. Right. And everything is so disguised right now because
Yeah.
it's like, well, women's health. We don't give enough attention to women's health. Well, men's health is actually the focus is more on perpetuating the separation through things like erectile dysfunction
Right.
medications versus all these other things that could be
Right.
done as far as, cancers and things like that. But it just,
Well, and where's the support for men's emotional health?
right. Oh, it's just non existent, non existent.
Yeah. So, and I'm not discounting the stuff that is, but here's the thing, women, what do we say? Well, women take care of themselves, women take care of each other. Women are strong because they have children, they blah 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 blah
Right.
blah blah blah, right?
Right.
And then we're just like men are physically strong.
Right. And so that's good enough. That's
And
good
that's
enough.
it, right?
They can be the rock. They can be the strength.
And that hurts them. It hurts them because they don't know how to be themselves because they think they're supposed to be filling these roles.
And expectations, and then the entire belief system.
Yes. Yeah. And it was funny because out of just the four of us doing the share Friday night, there were two men and two women. And as I was talking about this, both the men started going back and forth with each other, going, oh, wow, this just opens up so much from like what I did in high school, the things I did when I was younger, like all this kind
Right.
of stuff all throughout my life. And I'm like, right. And I'm like, and it's expected. Now be a man,
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Right.
So interesting to start saying, I feel like opening up these cracks are going to be opening up volcanoes over the next weeks in more than one area, but this one is pretty core.
Yeah, I agree. There's so much, and it's so in plain sight, and it's as we've expanded our consciousness and our awareness, and we see the chaos for what it is, and this is just part of the navigation that we
Yes.
always talk about. And it's like it's a new way to see things, to be able to navigate it.
Well, and understand its context, right?
Right.
And it's so funny because like I said, I was looking at all this stuff like rape and all these sexual issues and everything else all stem from this.
Right. Absolutely.
What they call sexual deviance. And I mean, and even like um violence, you know,
Pornography.
yeah, all of that, all of it.
Everything. Right.
Oh, so, you know, so then it's like, well, what do we do from that? I mean, the thing is to recognize it first and foremost, right? I guess. And the
Right.
second, Gloria says, but yes, are women as strong as we say ugh, when they in society place so much weight to men and what we expect of them? Yeah, well, that's because women are just expected to take care of themselves because we believe that, I mean, that's the whole thing. When you start looking at it from this other perspective, it's like, yeah, and that's probably why we put so much effort, to like appeasing the male's ego in society, because women are like, you know,
Right.
and it's funny because last week I was sitting with somebody like who's doing like a free 5-day master class thing, and somebody I know, and I got really turned off and triggered because she was talking about, oh, well, about the inequality in pay. And of course, women shouldn't be paid the same because, men have been taught to be the ones that are the providers and the ladder climbers. And that so triggered me right there. Right. But then I
Right.
looked at it going, well, obviously in the context of this week, there's something important for me to look at there, right? And it's almost like, yeah, because we gave that to them, you know? It's
Right. Right.
like,
Right.
here's your task, you know? But we've externalized it so much, and part of it has to do with, you know, really ultimately going back to the matrix without being distracted by all the details. It's like we've done this to perpetuate and really explore the depths of separation. Right.
Right. Right. I mean, that is, and that's the basis of both sides of that argument.
Yes. So, you know, because when we were saying is like, well, okay, so, you know, what is it? Because we were trying to get to that when we were talking last week.
Right.
This was 2 days of phone calls, Thursday and Friday last week, because we were like, we can't quite get to it. And like I said, yeah, so much clarity over the weekend for me. But the thing is ultimately coming to that place of balance within ourselves, right?
Right.
I mean, ultimately, because what it's like, so what are we afraid of? We're afraid of actually coming into balance within ourselves, because then we don't need anything outside of us. And then we complete all the lessons in the matrix, and then the matrix just disappears. Right. And
Right,
one
because
of the
because we the purpose of the matrix is to explore that separation, and when you come to that balance within yourself, everything just kind of fades away because it no longer serves a purpose.
right. Right. So I mean, and this is heavy, 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 heavy in terms of what we don't want to look at, because we've been doing a shiny for so long.
Right. Well, and it's not as clear cut as right, wrong, male, female, that kind of energies. It's so varying within the individual, and it's energy oriented, not gender oriented.
Right. Right.
And that disguises it.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, and we've said for a long time, like, you know, the understanding is that the initial effort of the gender thing, oh, excuse me, there is the yawn. Oh, must have been, felt like it had to do with, Gloria says she doesn't know what I mean. I don't know what you're asking because there's a delay when the comments come up. That was so 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, I don't know what
sure.
that was in reference to either.
But the whole thing is, if we, you know, we've created so much on the basis of need and propulsion,
Right.
that we are driven to do something or away from something
Right.
by being repulsed, by being triggered, by being whatever, right? That this is what we've based this whole experience about.
Right. It's avoidance of discomfort and trying to attain comfort. And
Right.
that's been our propulsion and motivation
Yeah.
through the whole thing.
So what I was going back to is what we've talked about for ages, is the understanding of the initial separation of gender had to do with creation based, whole based creation and separation based creation, right?
Right. Right.
And that turned into female is the whole based creation to male creation, a separation based creation.
Right.
And then from there, at the very two different forms of creation that we created, right, to experiment with. And then we evolved it. And then we let it go deeper into the muck as we made it more and more dense. And it's funny because when I was talking about this weekend, I said, you know, it's sort of like a big org chart, right? You start here and then we split up and then we split up again and then we split up again, right? And when we start seeing the matrix as a matrix, or like the collective ego or whatever, right?
Right.
And that we're all just facets of illusion that are created within this our identity, is because our consciousness, our expanded consciousness, is from where we created this, watching
Way
in.
back up the org chart.
Right. Right. And we're looking in from the outside in that control room, right, that we keep on seeing when we go into hypnosis and stuff, right? So it's like, okay, so we made it deeper and deeper, and we've made more and more facets and more separation, more and more individuals, right? More the illusion of more and more individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And we've lost, I think we sort of gotten lost in the complexities of the muck that we created. And so
Oh,
we put it on men and women. We put it on the man against woman thing.
right.
And we have all these, and they're so embedded. And then we believe them so much that we just let them perpetuate because
Right.
we're like, it's a status quo.
Right. And it appears that it's always been this way. So why would we question that?
Right. Right. So I don't know where that leaves us for what are we going to cover for I mean, this is a lot for people to really bite off and chew and sort of sit on because it's much bigger than a bread box, much bigger than the
Well,
white elephant in the room.
right. Well, and we've said that it's not a question of you know women taking their rightful place or it's coming to that place of
Balance and wholeness.
balance it right and losing that element of separation, whether it's internally or externally. And, as we always say, that the external is always just a reflection of what's going on the internal side.
Mm-hmm.
So as we see how things become more chaotic externally, that's just an indication of what's internal. So maybe it's just a question of, well, I always like to start with being observation and awareness, a different observing from a different place, having this information, and then
Right.
coming to a better understanding and acceptance, which then gets into the whole forgiveness process.
Right. Yeah, I was like, oh.
I know. Yeah. I know. And then, then you get into the whole worthiness to allow that resolution, and then the trusting and allowing.
Well, and because then there's the apology and forgiveness, right? Because there's this serious judgment. Like I said, when I hit upon, so do I think men are less than? Obviously I do. I just never really realized it,
Right.
because I don't give them full credit when I'm like, oh, well, she just took advantage of him.
Right.
She just manipulated him. And that's what we've done. We have nursed that. We have nursed it because it helps us perpetuate those energies in separation versus allowing that coming together in true partnership, like in true balance and true wholeness.
Right.
Yeah. And so then I judge myself, right, as part of that creation and perpetuation of it, even if I was unconscious of it.
Right. Yeah.
That's all I gotta say about that.
So I think the first step in what we clear today or embrace today is to stay in observation of it from a new perspective, new expanded perspective.
Right. Observation and maybe shifting ourselves to acceptance of that. The biggest challenge that we have is letting go of history.
Right. Yeah. So it's even beyond taking responsibility.
It's being able to come to peace and have forgiveness and apology and accept that circle, right, of everything that's happened up to now, to know that it was all perfect.
To bring us to this place right here, right now. Yeah. Yeah.
That feels so big. Well,
And I
like,
know it's like that's like a big pill to swallow.
right? Like it's about this big and stuff. I can
Right.
feel it stuck right here already.
Yep. Yep.
And to look at the past. Yeah, to be able to let go of the past. That keeps on coming up in my face.
Yeah, and I think that I feel that there's a lot of forgiveness, like you said, apology and forgiveness, and then the worthiness on all sides to allow the resolution of this. That
Yeah.
feels,
In love and
oof,
yeah, wholeness and freedom. Freedom.
yeah, yeah, because there's responsibility on all sides.
Well,
There is
it's all us essentially. So
right there is no right or wrong in this.
yeah.
It's just the acknowledgement and awareness of this piece of this level of the game.
Yes. Getting completed so we can move on
Right.
and do it differently and start bringing that balance back in here. And yes, infusing that in helps to resolve it, helps to resolve the matrix and the density that we've created it so that we can complete this part of the project and move on to the next one. Whatever crazy thing that could be.
Right.
Crazy fun adventure.
Right.
All right. So all of that. And it's all of that to wrap up into that pill. Let's make it tiny, right?
Right.
To bring it to the present, to bring us to the present, to see how do we do this from here every day.
Right.
No, like, but last week, blah, blah, blah. But 7 years ago, blah, blah, blah. But 20 years ago, blah, blah, blah.
No exceptions.
No exceptions. It's all perfect. And it's all equal and complete. And we allow ourselves to allow it to naturally balance that way. How's that? Oh, allow it to naturally balance that way.
Come into balance.
Come into balance. Yep. The feminine, masculine. That's where we start.
All right.
Oh, that feels all tingly. So let's
Okay.
go do that, shall we?
Yes.
Probably could do that for about 2 days to
I know I
week.
got lost out there. Oh my gosh, where am I?
Yeah. I got lost and then there's a noise out here in my hallway and then I was like, oh, and then I was like, oh, but we're just getting started. Let's just stay out here for like a week, okay? We've
I
got so
know, I
much to
know.
do. Oh, that feels like that's that's a little chip on the big iceberg,
Right.
but it
Well,
felt
and
good to look at.
I saw my husband and I painted a room this weekend, and it was interesting because we had one bucket of paint, two paintbrushes, a ladder, and the room. And the two paintbrushes were different sizes, and he and I are obviously different sizes. And it was amazing how we just worked. It was like it reminded me of like the symphony. So when I saw this whole resolution, that's what I saw, was that it just flowed and worked together so perfectly, that all the pieces and parts, and it it was like, when everybody brings the best of themselves, there's that synergy that's created. And it really hit me right in my heart, just how it everything just falls into place. That's all I can say, is that it just becomes that perfectness.
Well, and the best of yourself. This is funny that you say that exactly that way, because this is a huge part of a conversation I had yesterday. Is the best of yourself as you are today it doesn't have to be like some shining, like pillar of awesomeness, right? It's just showing up and being the best of who you are right now.
In that moment.
100%.
Right.
Authentic, without hiding, without, deceiving ourselves or others. I'm showing up 100% and being the best I am today, right now.
Right.
And if we
Yep.
can commit to that, I think that'll start to naturally allow other things to fall away that otherwise are things that impede us and prevent us from being authentic. And because we think, I'm not good enough, right? I can only I need to do this first, or I have this big problem, or I'm such a loser. Like, these are all the voices that go on in our head. Oh, I'm such a loser. I can't do this. I don't know how to do this. And it's like, but show up 100% and say, instead of listening to all those voices that just shut you down, just say, well, I'm going to show up and do my best for what I am right now.
Yep.
And if we all got into the habit of doing that,
All we'd have is the best of the best.
that's
Always.
it. That's it. And I
Right.
said, all it starts with is just saying it every day. I am showing up and being the best I can be today. The best me, the best version of me today. I am the best version of me in every moment.
Right.
And that's that trusting, allowing, embodying. I am the best version of me in every moment, regardless of what that looks like.
Right.
So that's everybody's affirmation for the week too, by the way.
Right. Go do that.
Go do that too. So yeah, that was the tip of the iceberg, but a good one to start with, I think.
Awesome.
Everybody have a great week. Thank you for joining us. We'll see
Yep.
you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
signing off with this week's Ascended World. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.